Well, what seems to be the eyes of the world have been on the Den tonight. Shaka Hislop is here with me as Millwall are back in action. This time they're hosting QPR, Shaka, but it's almost like all the talking points are definitely not about what's going to happen on the pitch after those horrendous scenes that we saw of fans booing as players took the knee against Derby in support of the Black Lives Matter movement. We know this has been a huge talking point this entire week, Shaka. This time out, though, of course, both clubs did more initiatives. They locked arms. They, were greeted to a rounding sound of applause, I would like to say. And then when certain players did take the knee, they were also even more applauded. So definitely a huge step, you'd think, Shaka, in the right direction. So are we feeling that all is forgiven now and we can move on?
No, listen, I don't think all can be forgiven, certainly not that easily. I think what we witnessed is a significant step in the right direction. On the one hand, I was against the locking of arms between the Millwall and QPR players. I just felt like that was a compromise. And listen, I understand. QPR stopped taking the knee some time ago. And we've spoken to Les Ferdinand about that and their interpretation of taking the knee before games. I fully respect their opinion and their position. But given what we saw over the weekend against Derby and the reaction of some of those Millwall fans, I just felt the show of locking of arms felt like compromise. That's how it felt to me. No, I'm not privy to the discussions that happened between the two clubs or even internally between Millwall or Queen's Park Rangers. But for somebody like me, looking in from the outside, it felt like we don't want to incur the wrath of the far right element of Millwall's fan base. So therefore, let's do this as a show of understanding. And for me, equality, racial justice is not an issue you compromise over.
Agree 100%. Now, Millwall Supporters Club earlier on this week, of course, a lot of people came out talking about this as it has been a huge has been a huge talking point. But the Millwall Supporters Club did come out with a statement, and I'll read an excerpt of it because they tried to explain probably as to why some of the fans were heard booing in that match against Derby. And they said anyone who believes it was a racist act should read the views of those who booed and see why they were doing it. And it was in reaction to the war memorials and statues of Winston Churchill being defaced by the Black Lives Matter organization and the extreme political views they hold and for which taking the knee is associated with. Shaka, once again, it's the whole, this is a human rights issue or political issue. Is there any understanding that you can lend, I suppose, to this sort of an explanation?
Look, in so many ways, it is both. There's no question that what certainly we continue to fight for, and we, between what we do here at ESPN, Alexis, my own involvement with Show Racism the Red Card, we're celebrating, we're kicking off our 25th anniversary celebrations tomorrow, by the way, and the activists of so many all over the world. It's about human rights, but you also have to recognize the political history to a lot of this racism. Slavery was a political act, as was colonialism. And I feel that both England's and America's, I'm in the US right now, refusal to acknowledge or confront the ugly sides of its history has been damaging in a number of ways. Let's take Germany and Nazism for an example. Germany have confronted and dealt with that ugly side to their own history head on. It's illegal for you to wave or display a swastika or Nazi memorabilia. Yet it is still very legal in the US and still championed in the US to brandish the what's the flag? The Confederate flag. The Confederate flag. Excuse me. And that refusal to confront that ugly side of the history and how it continues to impact Black, brown, and marginalized communities is one that is still a part of today's of the fabric of today's society. As a result, further, though we've not tried to deal with that history or teach an amended version, a correct version of history in our schools, we've continued to champion those who benefited from slavery, from colonialism. And as a result, what you're seeing is a backlash against those, where those who were harmed and continue to be harmed are quietened, yet those who benefited most are championed. And that for me is where the disconnect will continue to be. And until that is addressed, I'm not going to see it any other way, in all honesty.
And in terms of
let me add this, Alexis. It's gotten to the point where if you protest racism, the fabric of English, of British and American history is so ingrained with and intertwined with racism that when you protest racism, it's now interpreted as protesting the US, or in this case, the United Kingdom. And that for me is where the big disconnect continues to be. Protestism is far too easily interpreted, and quite possibly, and maybe rightly so, as protesting England because of their refusal to deal with that ugly side of its history.
And in football now, because obviously now that fans are starting to be let back in after the pandemic, the question has to be asked once again, and it's been asked to a couple of footballers this entire week, especially where Millwall is concerned. A lot of the comments that we saw from, the pundits as well as footballers who have played there have said that they were not surprised by the booing, because this is something that they do associate with Millwall. However, when they did ask the players and the coach if they felt that they saw booing tonight, or if they heard booing tonight, would they be in a position to just walk off and not play the game at all? They were still a bit hesitant and hopeful that it will never come to that. Do you feel like now that this wound has been reopened again, Shaka, do you feel like players probably have to start being serious about that threat before fans and other people can get the idea that the tolerance is zero?
Yeah, first of all, I don't think that onus should be on the players. That players shouldn't be put in that position that they have to make this decision. And an extreme call on their part that goes against everything they are and stand for as players. But in the other side of that same coin, the game has to step up and take responsibility and play its part in delivering a fairer society. And as much as we've spoken about Millwall and the reaction of their fans, a minority of their fans, I think what we need to do in equal measure is champion what happened at Culture and their chairman. They had a minority of fans booing, and their chairman put out a very strong message in support of taking a knee before games, in support of Black Matter, and in support of equality. You saw what happened at Spurs with the fans cheering when players took a knee. You saw what happened at Anfield with the message on the side of the stadium, and their fans also cheering loudly while players took the knee before the game. That is football leading the charge and being the best and being the example that we need. But too often we allow incidents like what happened at Millwall last week to dictate the discussion and to grab the headlines, where I want to focus on the positives that come out of this, on football being at its very best.
Well, thank you very much for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming, premium content, and let's not forget as well, ESPN FC 7 days a week, subscribe to ESPN+.